Hello and welcome to this video. Here I will quickly show you how to count the total number of distinctions for a particular entity using the DDD Learner Chart Report, and how to identify learners achieving near distinctions. So those learners achieving between 75% and just under 80%. So when you load your Learner Chart Report, you'll see a similar look to what's in front of you on the screen. If you scroll to the right, you will come to a column called Number of Distinctions. Here you'll see the number of distinctions each learner achieved. So for example, this learner here, if I scroll to the left, this learner under this name, which has been anonymized, achieved 1 distinction. If we move to the right, we can find that subject by looking for the subject where the learner achieved more than 80%. So this would be English Home Language. So we can do this for all learners using this column, the number of distinctions. If you wanted to calculate the total number of distinctions in this column, you could simply highlight the column and look at the bottom right under Sum. So there are 132 distinctions in total. So that includes learners who may have achieved more than 1 distinction. For example, this learner here who's achieved 4 distinctions. What we're going to do now is try and calculate how many learners have achieved at least 1 distinction. In order to do that, we need to count the number of cells or rows where there is a 1 or more and ignore all the zeros. To do that, we simply need to select our entire header row. To do that, we can scroll to the left, select and hold your left mouse button down, and just drag it to the right until we have selected all the headers in this file. I'll now go back to the beginning, and I will select Data at the top of my Excel application, and then I will go to Sort and Filter and click on the Filter button. There are many ways of achieving this. You can choose your own preferred method. What we want to achieve is a small square with a little arrow facing downwards. What we then want to do is remove all the rows with a 0. So when we press or left click onto that menu option, we see the total list of options available for that column. So we can see learners have achieved no distinctions, 1 distinction, all the way up to a maximum of 5 distinctions. By selecting the 0 or unselecting the 0, we are telling Excel to not show any rows where there is a 0. If we select OK, all the rows or learners, because each row represents a learner, with 0 distinctions disappears. We can now select that entire column. You can go all the way down and see that we still have 132 distinctions, and that makes sense because we only removed learners with no distinctions. And we have a count of 89. So Excel is telling us that there are 89 learners or rows where at least 1 distinction was achieved. If we scroll back to the top, we can always unselect that and bring all the zeros back. Now, if we had to select the entire column, we will have more than 89 learners. We will have a total of 866 learners. Let's say you don't want to filter, but you just want to sort from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. You can follow the same approach. Instead of selecting a value, you can simply say sort from largest to smallest, and then you'll get your learners who've achieved the highest number of distinctions in a descending order. You can scroll to the right, and then you'll see a lot of green cells representing those learners who have achieved distinctions or passes, and you can look for those subjects where they have achieved more than 80%, and that should add up to 5. Right, let's say you want to identify near distinctions. So these are learners who achieved in subjects between 75 and 80%. So for example, this learner here, who's achieved 5 distinctions, missed a distinction in life sciences by less than 3%. how can we identify these type of values in all of the subjects. So I'm going to show you how to highlight which subjects were achieved between 75 and 80%. There are at least 4 different ways to do this. I will show you 2 methods and then one method that's slightly more advanced. The first method is to select all the subjects. We go right to the bottom of your learner chart report. So now we have selected all the cells representing subject performance. We do not need to select other cells. Then we go to the Home menu option and we select Conditional Formatting. When we left click or select, we can go to the Highlight Cell Rules. This is a neat way of highlighting cells of certain values without needing to type in any formulas in Excel. So this is the easiest way to achieve this. We then select between 2 values, between 75 and 80. So we left click on between. Excel automatically puts in some values, but we want to change this. So we want to highlight cells or change the formatting of the cells that contain values between 75% and 79%. If we select 80, we're going to highlight cells that already represent distinctions. So we want to select between 75 and 79. There are no decimals, so there's no need to say 0.9. Simply 79 will suffice. So already you can see what Excel is doing. That life sciences cell has highlighted or been highlighted with a sort of red text and light red background. And we can see more pop up for each of the learners. And we can see that they all represent values between 75 and 80%. If you want, you can select different options for how you would like to filter for these subjects. But we can simply go with something that's more stark and select OK. Now for each learner, you can see where they have missed certain distinctions by less than 5%. So for example, this learner here missed mathematics by 1%. So although they already achieved 2 distinctions, they could have achieved 3 distinctions if they achieved 1% higher in their mathematics mark. If you would like to analyze one subject at a time, so this is the second option you can do here, we can select our heading row. So you can select that row simply by selecting the entire row or by highlighting the row. Then go to your data menu, select filter, and you'll see these little squares with downward facing triangles. You can then select any subject and then unselect all the cells until you are only left with cells between 75 and 80. The easiest way to do that would be to select all or unselect all, so all of the cells are unselected, and simply choose the 5 values that you want. So we want to see 75, 76, 77, 78, and 79. And that's how you can see the number of learners that missed a distinction by less than 5% for one subject at a time. We can see they have all been highlighted already because of the formatting that we did just now. But otherwise these would be green. We can then unselect that so that we can go back. You can either select clear in the menu here or clear in that column there. And you can do that for each subject. The final way to count or assess the number of near distinctions is using an Excel formula. Because we want to count the number of cells between 2 certain values, for example 77 and 77 here, we need to use the count ifs formula. And we need to tell Excel to only count cells if they are greater than a certain value and less than a certain value. So because we need 2 criteria, we need the count ifs statement. I will show you the calculation in this column. This is an empty column. We can rename this to, for example, near distinctions. So near distinction. To start the formula, we have to press equals, and we say count if. Now you have a count if function and a count ifs. We need to use the count ifs function because we have more than one condition. We open the brackets. Excel is then asking us for the range. So now we need to insert what range or which cells must Excel look at for this calculation. And we need Excel to look at all the subject cells for this learner. So we're doing one learner at a time. And so we've selected all the cells underneath all the subject performance columns. So that's from P7 to AK7, comma or semi-comma, depending on your formatting of Excel. Some Excels require a semicolon like that. I have set mine to a comma. I've specified the first range. I now need to specify the first criteria. So we need to do this in inverted commas. And we need to say, well, the first criteria is greater than or equal to 75. Close inverted brackets, comma. Now we need the range for the second criteria. It'll be the same range. So you can select that range again, or simply copy whatever the formula was in blue. So I will just say P7, AK7. Now we've selected the same range, comma, and the second criteria in inverted brackets will be less than 80. Or we could say less than or equal to 79 because we are not dealing with decimals here, but less than 80 will suffice. Close the inverted brackets, close the brackets, and enter. So here we have a formula that then is counting 2, and we can see that's correct. This learner missed a distinction by less than 5% in life sciences as well as accounting. And there are no more pink cells with red text for that learner. We do not have to retype this formula for every learner. We can simply left click and drag down for all learners till we get to the bottom of our learner chart for this entity. And now that we have them all selected, we can do a count and a sum. So there were 101 near distinctions for this entity. And in a similar way to how we counted the number of learners with at least one distinction, we can do the same for near distinction. Another way would be to just simply now sort from largest to smallest, highlight the cells until we see a 0 appear. Again, we see 101 near distinctions and 90 learners. So we know there are 90 learners who achieved between 75 and 80% for at least one subject, and the total number of subjects is 101.